Hi everyone, I'm Hagara Feldmann. I'm a CBT and schema supervisor and trainer from Israel, accredited by the ISST since 2013. And I'm the Director of Schema Therapy for Sabah, which is an ISST approved training program. I work with clients and supervisees both across Israel and worldwide. I work online, engaging with individuals from a wide range of cultural backgrounds. And in recent years, I've focused on writing and leading workshops that explore the unique aspects of online therapy, or specifically online schema therapy. So, what are we doing here today? Today, if you are new to schema therapy, I hope that this presentation will inspire you and give you a sense of how schema therapists listen to life stories and what questions we ask as chemotherapists, and how we do it actually from the very first session through a natural intake conversation. Okay. So in the first 2 or 3 sessions, we want to connect with the client and we want to hear their story. We want them to feel comfortable sharing whatever they're ready and willing to share. And at the same time, we also want to deepen the conversation through certain questions and attunement while holding the schema therapy model in mind. Our aim as schema therapists is to understand as much as we can about the client's unmet needs, the schemas that has been developed, and the modes that show up today, both for building the case conceptualization and for guiding our stance of limited reparenting with that specific client. We have a very short time today, so I hope it will be enough to demonstrate how schema therapist listens to life story, what kind of questions are worth asking to deepen our understanding already in the first sessions, as I said before, and in a way that allows us to form at least an initial conceptualization. What we'll start with is a pool of questions based on the core components of the model, and then I'll try to bring it to life through a brief therapeutic vignette. We'll start with needs. Needs are very important. They are the compass of schema therapy, since they guide us to the limited reparenting that the specific client needs, and therefore understanding the needs is actually a key factor for schema healing. There are many specific questions we can ask to explore needs, depends on the client story, but in fact, there are all variations of one basic set of mind, or one basic question. If we could go back in time and meet this little boy, what was missing and he needed the most? What was missing? What didn't he get or feel? Or what was the barrier to feel unseen or understood, loved, accepted, free to express himself, or free to play with friends without any worries, or exploring his own needs? And here are several examples of more specific questions, naturally deepening on the client's narrative. And I'll read just a few to get, the sense of it. So, who did you turn to when you were upset or scared? And what happened when you did? Were there times in your life you felt you had to hide parts of yourself or to achieve in order to be and feel accepted? Can you tell me something about expressing emotions in your family? Or did you have time to play and just be free with friends? Was that encouraged in your family? So I'm kind of going between the five groups of needs and trying to be more specific according to the information that the client starts sharing with me. We'll go to the next core component of the model, which is schemas, right? We know that when needs are unmet, schemas are created. And when we talk about early maladaptive schemas, here again, there are many specific questions we can ask to explore schemas, but in fact, they're all variations of one basic frame of mind. What was the lesson? What was the lesson and how did it feel? So when your mom, dad, peers used to criticize you, fight with each other, punish you, left you, did too much for you, and didn't let you try on your own or develop your own capabilities, what did you understand from that? What was the lesson? Was it about you? Was it about others? And how did it feel? Maybe you also feel the same in your body in similar situations, even nowadays, like when you have to compete on something at work or when you have any social interactions. And of course, questions can be more specific to what the client is sharing with us. For example, what did you come to believe about yourself based on how your classmates treated you? You're telling me that your parents were strict. Were there any rules, maybe spoken or unspoken, that shaped how you behaved or felt? How did your mom respond when you needed comfort or reassurance? Do you have friends? Did you feel as part of their group? Can you guess what kind of schemas I can hear or I can direct to think about with these questions? And now to the third component of the model, modes, right? When we try to explore needs and schemas, we look back in time, back to childhood, to the time where the primary attachment was the most important one, with the parents, where all the lessons were learned. But when we talk about modes, we talk about the present, the present. In present times, when we face a triggering event, okay, an event where the needs are not met and schemas are triggered, the way any human being would turn to, what we'll see is the different modes. Modes are transient, they are momentary states of self, which operate in the present times, in the present moment. Therefore, we can start by exploring recent triggering events to begin mapping the modes around the reason for referral, for example. So if our client is coming to work on his self-esteem, we can ask, can you please think about the last time you felt bad about yourself? So we're looking for the triggering event and tell me what happened? What was the triggering event? Um, I want to emphasize that this question, okay, what was the triggering event, can also put some light on the schemas, because the schemas are also our sensitive buttons. These are the themes that we tend to be more triggered with. So if the client would say, well, last time I felt unworthy was when the woman I dated told me that she's not interested. Then we can think about maybe defectiveness shame, maybe abandonment. If the client would talk more about whenever I lose a competition, okay, then we might think about other schemas, maybe also defectiveness shame, but maybe the secondary one would be unrelenting standards, for example. So the triggering event is what's happening to the client that is triggering for him. And again, it can help us get the direction or some thoughts about his schemas. And then we would ask, and what did you think, or what did you say to yourself at this moment? This is how we locate the inner critic, right? I just thought that I'm an idiot. Okay. And how did you feel? Like, how did you feel when you walked into the room? There was this like voice in your head saying, you're such an idiot. How did you feel? This is how we try to discover the child modes. And what did you do? Like, what did you do to feel better about yourself or to avoid a catastrophe that you were worried about? This is how we get the coping modes. So this is one way of catching the dominant modes, even from the first session. But we can also identify mode through our direct experience with the client, like noticing and exploring in the here and now, observing what happens between us during the session. So I could feel that my client has changed, like kind of shut down. And then I'll ask, I've noticed that something just happened right now. It feels like you are not with me anymore. Can you tell me what happened? Like, did I do anything that made you feel uncomfortable? Or yeah. I've noticed that sharing about your achievements are like highly important for you. Have you noticed that? Can you tell me a little bit about that? Like, since when you remember yourself so aware of your achievements or need to share them? Or did you learn that achievements are so important? Or if we hear the client criticizing himself, we can ask, oh my God, it sounds like there is a part of you who is saying like really horrible things about you. So these are the ways to start signing the modes. So what did we have till now? We had questions of how to explore needs, and then some general framework of questions to explore and identify schemas and the needs. Just some more examples of questions to dictate coping styles and modes can be like if the client says, oh, I'm such a loser. We can pause and ask, oh, wow, do you usually talk to yourself or about yourself that way? Who talk to you that way? Or how does it feel in your body when you get into the room with all these important people you told me about, thinking, I'm such a loser? How does it feel emotionally? Or when you're telling me that you were a good, obedient child, do you feel that you tend to be the same also today? And this is kind of a way start to linking childhood coping styles to present coping modes. Okay. So now let's try to think about all these questions and what we can understand from them through a clinical vignette. And you'll see how from this very small paragraph, you can already find so much information only with, some deepening questions with curiosity and empathy. So let's start. We're talking about Josh. Josh is a 40 years old man, and he came to therapy in order to work on his challenges, to feel close to others and to be authentic and to feel worthy. And this is what he tells about himself. I grew up in a pretty normal family, nothing unusual. My dad was strict. He was yelling, sometimes hitting, but that was just how it was back then. My mom was softer, but anxious and usually stayed quiet. And I was the oldest, so I had to be the example for my siblings. My parents worked hard, so they weren't really around much. I spent time in my room reading or drawing. Sometimes I was just trying to do something to make my mom smile. In school, I did okay. Like with friends, I was the funny one, and my grades were not the best and not the worst, just a medium student. But in high school, I did struggle with math, which my dad never ever satisfied with me. He got really angry about grades, and nothing was good enough for him. But Agara, that was back then. I'm not sure how it's related. I'll tell you what I'm dealing with now. Now I have challenges with women. I get attached very quickly, but I'm always so afraid they'd leave. And at work, I'm considered good, but inside, I really feel like any mistake will show that I'm not really enough. It's like they'll figure it out, they'll find my secret. Uh, well, still, I guess that's just me. Pretty normal like anyone else, I guess, nothing unusual. I'm quite sure that with every sentence, you can see how it holds clues to unmet needs, schemas, and modes. And now we'll see how some more questions can help us move from a client narrative to a schema formulation and to attune to our client in a limited reparenting stance. So what I'll do now, I'll just pull out single sentences, one after the other, and we'll try to show you how you can extract truly a great deal of relevant information to schema therapy lens. Let's start with the question with the sentences. So I grew up in a pretty normal family that was strict, yelling, sometimes hitting, mom anxious, quiet. That was just how it was back then. So questions we can ask to understand more can be, when you say a regular childhood, can you tell me a bit more? Or, yeah, well, I guess life was difficult back then, it's true, but still, for you as a little boy, what was it like? What did you wish for? And how did you feel when your dad yelled or hit you? What did you learn about yourself or others from all those moments? Well, the client goes on, I told you that's just how it was back then. What do we sense? We sense detached protector mode, right? We feel the way the client kind of pushing me, doesn't want to feel connected to his childhood pains. And then with a little more pushing, he might say, well, I guess probably I'd be happier if that wasn't so unpredictable and angry all the time or blaming me. Or, at least if mom could stop him. What needs can we already sense from this reply of the client? We can hear about his need for safety, for predictability, comfort, protection, feeling worthy and loved. And what schemas might be connected to these unmet needs? Probably emotional deprivation, mistrust abuse, defectiveness shame, maybe abandonment or instability. And then he continued, Aga, it was tough, my dad, but I was a difficult child. I drove him crazy, so I guess I deserve to be punished. What do we hear? What do we hear now? Right? We can hear the modes. We can hear the punitive and guilt-inducing parent, the vulnerable child with the flavor of a humiliated and abused child. In the schemas, emotional deprivation, mistrust abuse, punitiveness, defectiveness, maybe. And what kind of limited reparenting can we offer to this client? We might say in response, of course, you would be happier if it was more calm and predictable. The way you grew up, that sounds really painful. No child deserved to be treated that way. Or you were just a little boy. I'm sure you didn't do anything so bad to deserve that. Or I can refer to our therapeutic relationship. I do want to reassure you that you don't need to be perfect here with me just to keep me happy or calm. I truly want to know you and to know how you feel. Let's continue. My parents worked hard. Um, there was not a lot of money, so they weren't really around much. I stayed in my room. What do we want to ask? What do we want to know to get more information? So it might be, well, so you kind of took care of yourself and learn how to, how to be there. But who did you go to when you were scared or hurt? Or maybe even just when you wanted to share something, you just told me about your drawing. So who did you show your drawings? Who noticed you when you were upset? And who took care of you? Was there anyone waiting for you with lunch or helped you with your homework? If I had a magic stick to make everything really good for this young boy, what might a child like you have needed back then? So if the client would say maybe more attention, someone to notice, maybe if mom was waiting with lunch, that would be nice, I guess. We start to connect the client to help him think about his early needs, about what was missing, and actually get in touch with his vulnerable child mode. But with this reply, we can understand something about his need for nurturance, for being seen, for being taken care by someone. We obviously hearing about the emotional deprivation schema, and we hear the vulnerable child mode, right? The lonely, the unloved, the unseen. But I knew how to manage. I already told you, I did things in my room. And anyway, everyone was busy. That's just how it was. Again, what do we hear? We hear the detached protector mode, right? Pushing me again. There was a little connection with the pain, with the unmet need, and immediately the detached protector mode. A limited reparenting response might be, I know they were busy. I don't want to blame the parents, right? So I might say something like, of course, I'm not blaming your parents. I know they were really busy and they probably had a little choice. But, every child deserves to have his or her parents' attention and love. Every child needs to be noticed. I can really imagine, I'm looking at you and I can really imagine this little boy alone in his room, probably wishing that someone was there. And I wish I could be there for you back then. Okay, let's take one more example due to our time limitation. And let's take this sentence. In high school, I struggled with math. Dad was never satisfied. He got angry about grades and nothing was enough for him. What do we want to understand? What do we want to learn? We want to know, like, what did that boy tell himself when dad was so angry about its grade or disappointed? What did you learn about yourself in these moments? What did it feel like? It felt really bad. I felt like such a loser. I don't know, like, ugh. And how did you react? We're trying to get the early coping strategy. The client might reply, well, obviously, I thought I wasn't good enough. What is the need? Unconditional acceptance. What are the schemas? Probably defectiveness, shame, failure. And the modes, what we hear is the vulnerable child that feels unworthy. You might continue. You asked me what I learned, like, and how I coped. So, I just knew that I had to try harder. Otherwise, people will always be disappointed of me and leave me. More information, right? Unrelenting standard schemas, emotional deprivation, probably abandonment. We can hear the punitive and demanding parent mode, and probably the basis for an overcompensator who's always trying harder and harder and nothing is ever good enough. What kind of limited reparenting response can we offer to this client? We can say, wow, that's so painful. I'm thinking about this little boy that really did his best and still felt like a failure. Sounds so unfair. Sitting here with you now, I want you to know you are good enough exactly as you are. Or I might say, I promise you that I'm not here for your achievements. I know this is how you grew up, but I'm here for you, for this little boy who is still living inside of you, even if you don't notice him very often. I'll go quicker about the other slides since we don't have enough time. Okay, so that's it for today. But I hope that this small presentation and just the few sentences that I picked and followed by the relevant questions and how we think about the answers, what filters do we use? Like, how do we locate? It's like it's like needs, schemas, and modes radar when we were listening to this life story and ask more and more questions. So I hope that it gave you a good example of how, in fact, even from such a small piece of information, just this little vignette, we can already end up the first session with quite a good basic schema, needs, schemas, and modes conceptualization about the client. And we learn a lot of how to attune to him and what kind of limited reparenting he might need from us. So thank you for being with me. And I hope that, let me just stop share, sorry. Yeah, and I hope that it was helpful to you. I want to wish you a wonderful journey as a new schema therapist or schema therapist in training, or even if you are already schema therapist, I hope you love it the same as I do. Thank you so much for being here, and bye.